Welcome to Global Sky Update. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon for more updates. Why are there not more people talking about the real story behind the South China Sea clash? Tonight, breaking news from the South China Sea, a flashpoint for global tension. At Sabina Shoal, inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, Filipino fishing boats faced off against the Chinese Coast Guard at dawn. The small wooden bancas were dwarfed by the imposing Chinese vessels, the air thick with tension and the blare of horns. For those on the water, this was a direct threat to their safety and livelihood. This is the latest in a series of escalating encounters in these contested waters. The world is watching closely, as embassies and military commands scramble for information. What happens next could shape the stability of this vital waterway for years to come.
Sabina Shoal, also known as Escoda Shoal, is a remote reef that lies deep within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, a maritime area recognized internationally as belonging to the Philippines. These are waters that Filipino fishermen have depended on for their livelihoods for generations, passing down skills and traditions from father to son and forming the backbone of many coastal communities. On the morning of the incident, a small fleet of Filipino fishing boats set out as usual, but instead of a routine day at sea, they were confronted by a formidable presence, multiple Chinese Coast Guard and militia vessels blocking their path. Eyewitnesses on the scene reported that the Chinese ships unleashed powerful water cannons, sending torrents of water crashing onto the small wooden boats, battering them and forcing the fishermen to retreat in fear for their safety. The clear goal was to intimidate, inflict damage, and ultimately block Filipino access to these traditional fishing grounds, making it nearly impossible for them to work. Chinese vessels also performed aggressive and dangerous maneuvers, swerving alarmingly close to the much smaller Filipino boats, risking a serious collision at any moment. A spokesperson for the Philippine Coast Guard condemned the actions as reckless and provocative, emphasizing the grave risk of injury or even loss of life for the fishermen involved. Analysts reviewing the incident agree this was not a random act, but a coordinated and deliberate operation by China to assert control over the disputed waters and intimidate local fishermen. China is increasingly using its Coast Guard as a so-called gray zone tool, enforcing its sweeping maritime claims without resorting to open conflict, but still exerting pressure and control. For the Filipino fishermen, these tactics are terrifying and deeply unsettling, denying them access to their traditional fishing grounds and threatening their only source of income. The shaken crew returned home empty-handed, their story now one of intimidation and fear, rather than a successful catch, another chapter in the ongoing struggle for the South China Sea.
Beyond geopolitics, these clashes have a profound human cost. For the people living along the Philippine coast, the conflict is not just a headline. It is a daily reality that shapes their lives and futures. One fisherman, Roberto, described the fear as a massive Chinese ship bore down on his small boat. "We are just fishermen. We have no weapons, only our nets and courage." The sense of vulnerability is overwhelming, as they face not only the unpredictable sea, but also the threat of foreign vessels. The psychological toll is immense. Lifelong fishermen are now afraid to return to their traditional grounds. The uncertainty of each trip weighs heavily on their minds, turning what was once a routine into a source of anxiety. Financial losses are devastating. A ruined trip can plunge a family into debt. For many, a single day's catch means the difference between putting food on the table or going hungry. The stakes are painfully high. "They are stealing food from our children's mouths," one man said. The struggle is not just about money, but about dignity and survival. Anxiety ripples through coastal communities. Wives and mothers wait anxiously for safe returns. Every departure is fraught with worry, and every homecoming is a moment of relief. A community leader in Palawan shared, "Every time the boats go out, we pray for their safe return." Faith and hope bind these communities together, even as uncertainty grows. The sea, once a source of life, is now a source of fear. What was once a place of abundance and promise has become a battleground, both physically and emotionally. This is the real-world impact. livelihoods lost, communities living in fear, a way of life under threat. The ripple effects are felt by every generation, from the youngest children to the village elders. At its core, this is about a fisherman's right to work in his own country's waters. It is about the fight to preserve tradition, identity, and the hope for a better future. The stories of men like Roberto remind us these disputes have real, painful consequences for ordinary people. Their resilience and determination are a testament to the enduring spirit of coastal communities who continue to hope for peace and the chance to live without fear. For Manila, the issue is clear. The Chinese Coast Guard's actions violate Philippine sovereignty and international law. The government's response is swift: diplomatic protests and publicizing incidents to rally global support. Videos and photos document harassment, creating an undeniable record. This is asymmetric diplomacy, using information to counter physical power. The Philippines is also bolstering its maritime presence, escorting fishermen and resupply missions despite the risks. The 2016 Hague ruling is the legal foundation for Manila's claims, consistently referenced in official statements. For the Philippines, it's not just a piece of paper, it's the definitive legal basis. A Filipino senator summed it up: "We respect the rule of law. The world ruled in our favor. All we ask is that this ruling be respected." The balancing act continues, asserting rights without escalating conflict. The stakes are national sovereignty and the livelihoods of thousands.
To understand China's actions, look at the map as Beijing sees it. The 9-dash line, based on historic rights, claims nearly 90% of the South China Sea, overlapping the EEZs of neighbors. From Beijing's view, Sabina Shoal is Chinese territory. Patrolling and expelling intruders is law enforcement. China rejects the 2016 arbitral ruling, insisting disputes be settled through direct talks, not international courts. The claim is rooted in a narrative of historical presence, citing ancient maps and records. This stance puts China at odds with its neighbors and the international community. By patrolling, blocking access, and building artificial islands, China aims to make its claim a permanent reality.
The conflict centers on international law, specifically the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. UNCLOS grants coastal states a 200 nautical mile EEZ, giving exclusive rights to resources. In 2013, the Philippines took China to court, challenging the 9-dash line. The 2016 tribunal ruling was clear. China's historic rights have no legal basis, and features like Sabina Shoal are within the Philippines' EEZ. But the tribunal has no enforcement power. China rejected the ruling and continues its activities. This creates a dilemma, a legally binding decision versus the reality of power on the water. The Philippines and allies uphold a rules-based order. China insists on its own interpretation of history and sovereignty. The legal case is closed, but the dispute on the water continues. The world is left to grapple with the gap between law and enforcement.
Sabina Shoal standoff is part of a broader pattern. China's escalating actions across the South China Sea. Similar confrontations have occurred at Second Thomas Shoal, where Filipino Marines are stationed on a grounded ship, and at other key locations. Chinese vessels have used water cannons and blockades to disrupt Philippine resupply missions, hoping to force abandonment. This pattern extends to Vietnam, Malaysia and Indonesia, all facing Chinese incursions. The common thread: grey zone tactics, aggressive, coercive, but just short of war. A defence analyst called it salami slicing, small actions that add up to major strategic gains. The Sabina Shoal incident is one more slice in a long-term campaign for control.
Why does this matter globally? The answer goes far beyond the borders of the countries directly involved. What happens in the South China Sea can send ripples across the entire world, affecting economies, security, and the daily lives of millions. The South China Sea is a critical commercial waterway. 1/3 of global shipping, over $3 trillion annually, passes through these waters. This narrow stretch connects major economies, making it a vital artery for international trade. Instability here could disrupt supply chains, causing shortages and higher prices worldwide. Everyday products, from electronics to food, could become scarce or more expensive, impacting consumers everywhere. The freedom of navigation is not just a legal principle, it's an economic necessity. Without it, global commerce would slow, and businesses around the world would feel the impact. The US has a mutual defense treaty with the Philippines, obligating it to respond if Philippine forces are attacked. This commitment extends American interests directly into the region. Recent US statements clarify this includes Coast Guard vessels in the South China Sea, raising the stakes and making any confrontation potentially more dangerous. A miscalculation could trigger a US-China conflict, drawing in other nations and escalating tensions rapidly. The South China Sea is now a central arena for US-China strategic competition, where military power and diplomatic influence are constantly tested. US and its allies conduct freedom of navigation operations to assert these are international waters, challenging excessive territorial claims and demonstrating unity. For them, it's about upholding a rules-based order and preventing unilateral changes to international borders, which could set dangerous precedents elsewhere. The stability of the Indo-Pacific and the global economy depends on what happens here. The world is watching, knowing that peace or conflict in these waters will shape the future for everyone.
Where do we go from here? The South China Sea is a dangerous puzzle with no easy solution. On one side, the Philippines and allies standing on international law. On the other, China, enforcing historical claims with might. Escalation risks regional conflict. De-escalation requires trust and diplomacy in short supply. For ordinary people, like Filipino fishermen, the stakes are immediate: livelihood, safety, and the right to work without fear. Their plight is a symbol of what happens when disputes move from courtrooms to open water. The world faces a choice: a future governed by rules and respect, or by force and intimidation. The hope is that international attention and diplomacy can prevent tragedy. Until then, the waters remain tense, and the world watches, hoping law and courage can hold the line.